Hi everybody, don't touch that dial. This is the Hank Cisco Show, and what a show I have for you today. This is Stan Casascio. I have Monsignor Marine, Charlie Tornetta. I have Rich Catagnus.
No, Jim Catagnus.
Jim Catagnus and Rich Catagnus over here. And they're all part of the MSS Lodge in Norristown. And Monsignor, why don't you tell us a little bit about the lodge and what it stands for and what it represents?
Okay, the MSS Lodge was founded in 1906, really to help the immigrants who came from Sciacca and had come to Norristown.
And Sciacca is a town in Sicily.
Is a town, a sea-coast fishing village in the southern part of Sicily.
I guess that's where you got your last name, Marine, right?
That's right, exactly. It means fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
So our people came here to Norristown for a better life, and when they came here, they were very, very poor. So they needed help when people got sick, when people died. They needed money for a funeral.
They didn't have all the human services that are available today. It was all neighbor helping neighbor.
Neighbor helping and family helping family. They didn't speak the language, so they needed each other. So the MSS was formed to help for those material needs. But the other reason it was formed was these people had left their homeland and the culture and the traditions that they had. And so one of the most important traditions was the annual feast. And so the MSS was to also care for the spiritual needs of the people by providing that celebration.
And the MSS stands for?
Maria Santissima del Soccorso di Sciacca, Our Lady of Perpetual Help of the city of Sciacca.
And of course, back then, there was not an easy way. It wasn't really easy. You couldn't get on a plane and fly back in 6 hours. It was in a very arduous trip over the Atlantic and everything else, which could take a couple weeks to do it. So once they got here, they were pretty much locked here.
They were here. Very rarely did they go back. My great-grandfather came over, worked, made some money, actually did go back to marry my great-grandmother, and then never returned.
Never returned?
Yeah, never returned back to their homeland.
Yeah. So, but before we go any further and talk a little bit more in detail about this, there's a secret that's out here that Charlie Tornetta and you both went to school from grade school on through. So you got
for 12 years.
12 years. So they knew each other. So I got a little dirt on you, Charlie, and I have a little dirt on Monsignor.
You don't have much dirt on Monsignor. Me, I understand.
Well, Charlie has taken full responsibility and given the reason why Monsignor became a priest. And that was because Charlie was the bad guy in school, and he needed to make sure he had someone to speak for him to get into heaven.
Absolutely.
And he figured, I got to pull this guy in, because he, as Charlie said, he always knew he was going to be a priest. So he figured he was his ticket, insurance company.
Yeah, right.
Insurance agent.
And then, of course, Monsignor told me that the big thing was, and I wanted to get a picture of us to put it on the air, but it might have been pretty bad to do that. But Charlie was the drum major at drum major at Bishop Kendrick, so he was a guy out in the front with the stick.
And the big hat.
And the big hat, and Monsignor was in the back in the drums. He was way in the back with the drums. So, but, we're all sitting here, and we're all of Italian traditions and ancestry, so this is like being in the kitchen, less the food. But tell us about, you all came from the town of Sciacca. And so tell us a little bit about the traditions and what it means to you and how you got involved, because you're the president of the lodge.
Yes,
Charlie.
I have the honor, and I cherish it. I'm humbled to have the responsibility of being the president of the MSS Lodge. Jim Catagnus is our feast chairman. Rich Catagnus is our financial secretary. And of course, Monsignor Marine is our spiritual director. We are in existence to carry on the tradition that was started by our grandfathers, great-grandfathers that came over from Sciacca, from Sicily, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and formed the organization. We don't all live in the same neighborhood anymore. Back then, we all did. We all lived in the East End of Norristown. Now we're spread out. We're out through Montgomery County. Some are even out of state, but they still remain members because we need to carry on this tradition. It was a promise that was made to our Blessed Mother 500 years ago.
Exactly.
Right?
So tell me a little bit about that, because that's important to understand how this whole feast day, and Rich, rather Jim, when you get a chance, we'll hold that up and the cameras will pick that up. That's the poster that's going to be out there commemorating the feast day this year, which is on the 18th of August.
Right.
So you can hold that up for a little bit and we'll get a shot of that. But tell us about what happened 500 years ago and how this whole process started, because I think that's a very interesting story.
It is, and Monsignor can probably tell it better than me. Please, feel free to interject at any time. But it was the Black Plague. 515 years ago, whatever it was, there was the Black Plague that was sweeping through Europe. And Italy and Sicily were not exempt from that plague. However, it was getting so bad in Sciacca, the town in Sicily, that they decided to bring the statue of the Blessed Mother out from the cathedral, the Chiesa Madre, bring her out. The fishermen were the ones that brought her out and brought her through the streets. As they were bringing her through the streets, they got to the piazza, and all of a sudden there was this smoke that was just permeating the whole area. And it was fragrant, and they just knew instinctively that this was a miracle that was happening because the plague immediately stopped at that point. Correct, John?
Right, exactly.
And
it was like an incense smell. And they still, 525 years later, still commemorate that in Sciacca, that particular spot where that miracle happened. But the important thing is, after the event happened, it was such a great thing to be cured of this plague that was just devastating all of Europe.
It destroyed half the population of Europe.
Exactly. That the people made a vow of a solemn promise that they renew every year on February 2nd. They renew it to thank the Blessed Mother, Mary, the Mother of Jesus, for intervening, for interceding to end this plague and to keep Sciacca safe from it.
I think you have a picture, Monsignor, of the size
Yes.
of the statue. And I'm hoping the camera can pick this up. Don't forget to tip it a
Tip,
little
yeah.
bit. Tip it a little bit
Forward,
forward. Tip it
forward,
forward,
forward like
so
that,
the glare
okay.
doesn't come out. And I don't know if you can pick that up, but there's like 100 men carrying this very ornate statue.
They're all fishermen.
And they're all
I
fishermen.
want to point out that the statue in this picture is actually the statue that was carried when that miracle happened. So that
500 years
statue is
ago.
over 500 years old, sculpted, in Sicily. So
You don't know who the artist was that
We
did
do.
that?
It was, can't remember the name, but it was actually sculpted in Palermo.
in Palermo, right?
And Monsignor, will you tell the story about how it made its way to Sciacca?
Yes. Well, it was transported by a.
We can put that,
Can we put it down?
I think they
It was
got
transported by a barge down, and of course the thing it's massive. It's all marble, and so when they got into the port, which is way down at the bottom, because this is a town that goes up along the side of a mountain. Anyway, how were they going to get it up into the city? The fishermen, of course, were the ones right there. So they carried it up, and from that point on, they became like the curators of the statue. They, in a sense, possess it. And to this day, they're the only ones that are allowed to carry it in procession. So nobody else can get under that statue except the fishermen.
I assume it's almost like these people are picked out, or is it rotate through the fishermen, or how are the men
Well, they
chosen?
kind of, when you're at the procession there, they kind of have to all, nudge their way in. There's a little bit of like, handling, elbowing going on.
Well, given the size of it, I'm sure the guys that are nudging the way in are pretty powerful
And of
guys.
course, the honor of taking the statue out of the church at the beginning of the procession is one of the greatest honors, But your family has to be traced back to those fishermen.
That's a very interesting story. So the thing that gets me is that, these traditions, and even Norristown, I think they now celebrate the feast of Guadalupe.
The Mexican people, yes.
Yes, and that's become a very powerful. It is so interesting, the traditions that we all bring to this country from our homes, whoever we are. I mean, we happen to be Italian Americans, but we have the Irish American, African American, Polish American, and they all have their traditions
That's right.
that they bring here. So we are really a very unique country because we put everybody in the same towns, basically, all these different people, and we all
Remarkably,
we
we all
all
get
interact
along.
on this stuff.
And get along.
And we get along for the
Yes,
most part, you know, more so than any other place in the world, so it's really interesting. And these traditions bring us all together for the most part,
Sure,
and do that. Interesting thing is, you know, I'm a product of, we're about the same age, we're like 39.
Right, exactly.
So just to keep that in mind. But we remember the nuns and everything, and, you know, make sure you printed right and spelling and all that. But,
Penmanship.
and of course, we were all in the classes of 50 kids back in the day when,
Yes.
you went to Archbishop Kendrick.
Well, Holy Savior
Holy
first.
Savior Grade
First,
School,
you-
grade
Holy
school.
Savior Grade School, and then
then
Bishop
at
Kennedy High
Bishop-
School.
Yeah.
Right.
Bishop Kennedy High
Yeah,
School.
65 in our first grade class. I think. So
Yes,
it's
there were 65
And
kids.
one nun.
And one nun.
One nun.
Yeah,
One
Sister
nun.
Daniel Marie. if I-
Sister Daniel
I still remember that?
She's still
I had a
alive.
crush on her. She told me I kissed the Blarney Stone, right? We're all Italian kids in an Italian parish, and all the nuns are Irish.
Oh, I figured that one out.
So we had to speak English. None of us learned Italian.
That's really good. So how about you guys? Did you have the Catholic school background too? or-
I didn't have the Catholic school background, but I will say that, you know, my dad and mom always took us to the MSS feast on Marshall Street, and as I grew older, I wanted to become a member of the lodge, and I became a member. I was the last person inducted into the society at our old building on Marshall Street, and then I eventually became feast chairman and an officer, and it's been, I think, I believe it's 15 years now that I've been the feast chairman, maybe a little bit longer or a little less. And my great-grandfather was one of the 4 founding members of the lodge.
And your grandfather was
Was
from
Sciacca, yeah.
From Sciacca.
And his name was Filippo Catagnano, and our name was changed here in the States. And I'm not sure exactly the time frame, but probably around 1920 or somewhere in that neighborhood, and maybe a little bit after that. And so I felt an obligation to continue on, and then hopefully, you know, it carries on from Rich and I, because we're, I guess, the younger statesmen here at this point in time, but it's a great honor, and it's dear to my heart, and I've been the shocker for the feast with Monsignor Marine, and so hopefully, you know, we can keep these traditions going. Not easy.
How about you?
It's very similar to Jim. You know, my family was very much involved. My dad was involved with the organization when I was a kid, and we'd always come to the feast and so on. Did not have a religious education of any kind, but was very interested in making sure that this was a part of my life. And now it's a part of my family's life. My son is now a member, and so we want to continue the tradition if we can.
Yeah, those are the great things about, and if we can, because we can, as we move further away from these traditions in our different generations, it's hard to bring people in. So it's really important for families to do that and to bring these people into these traditions.
And it becomes harder and harder to do that with all the organizations, you know, regardless of what it is.
There is a lot of interference from all the different things that you can get involved in,
Yeah.
from sports and
Yeah.
computer stuff and games and everything
Kids are
else. You
busy.
know,
Yeah.
the kids
Families are
have a
busy.
pretty full schedule. But I'm interested in some of the things, because Monsignor, you talked about how the function of this was to help the immigrants who came here from the Italian, because we had there was no Social Security, there was no
Nothing.
Medicare, there was none of this stuff, and people would get sick, and, you know, getting doctors, and you know, granted, all of us that came here face a certain amount of prejudice and everything else like that. Because I think you told me the story that your name actually got changed.
Right.
And I would love you to tell that story, because I think it's important for the viewers to understand that all these different layers come with a little bit of angst with it. But
Right.
tell us that story, because I
Well,
think it's really
yeah,
interesting.
and you'll notice that a lot of the Italian names in the Norristown area were Americanized, like you said, like Catagnus, you know. My last name was Marino, and my grandfather's name was Salvatore Marino. So when he came here, he wanted to get into business, and he was trying to start a tap room, a restaurant down near Conshohocken, and so his name was Salvatore Marino. He couldn't get it. So he went to a lawyer, and the lawyer was a Quaker. And he said, Sal, let me work on this. So what he did was he said, your name is now going to be Sullivan Marine, and that's how I'm going to apply for the license. He applied for the license, and almost immediately he got it, because they thought he was not Italian. So it's just the prejudice that happened to be
Well, of course,
existing at that time.
of course, at that time, we've had the Prohibition, and it was
Sure.
after the Prohibition, and you had mostly the Italian
They were
bad guys
considered
were
gangsters, right?
gangsters. and
Gangsters
they were
were
Italian.
involved.
Yeah, because I remember my father showing me an ad that said, you know, Polish, Italians, and Negroes need not apply
Right.
into the, for jobs that were
That's
there.
right.
So there were definitely, we've overcome a lot.
Yeah.
But knowing that, you're facing all these different things, your family's facing that. So what are the things today that the MSS Lodge is doing for its community? I'm sure it's not even just strictly related to Italians at this particular point. I'm sure it has many other functions. So if you can talk a little bit about that, I think it's important to see how it's been updated as we go along.
Your essay contest that you have is
The MSS for the past at least 30 years, 30-plus years, has offered a scholarship each year, scholarship award to a boy and a girl. But recently, when we were all part and based through Holy Savior Church, and Holy Savior had its own elementary school, it was easy to assign the scholarship going from Holy Savior to Bishop Kenrick, okay? Those schools don't exist anymore. So we opened it up to all of the children that are of Italian heritage to any degree throughout the county, okay? And what we did was we said, look, we want you to learn about your heritage. So to qualify, submit an essay. Submit an essay telling about your family, your grandfather, your grandmother, whoever means a lot to you and how it relates to your heritage. Or pick someone from history, Archimedes, whoever. Write about that, just to give them an opportunity to do some research and looking into their history. So because of that, we still continue the scholarship award, but now it's based on merit. And it's to a boy and a girl that are from anywhere from 8th to 12th grade, and it's a cash award that goes to them. They can use it however they like. Hopefully they use it to help their parents with their tuition, going to college, or even with the high school. Going to high school and using it as part of the tuition at Pope John Paul II High School or wherever. So that's one of the things. We have an annual Brajol night, which we just had a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Everybody who's non-Italian watching is what Brajol is.
Brajol. It is
Because
like
my mouth is already watering.
It is
I'm
one of
thinking of
the-
my mother's Brajol, but go ahead. You said-
one of the most beautiful meals you can imagine. It is it's usually a flank steak. It can be a pork cutlet, but most of the times it's a flank steak that is stuffed with garlic, of course, hard-boiled egg, some breadcrumbs, some herbs and Parmesan cheese, whatever, rolled up, baked, and then cooked and simmered in sauce and gravy. And then you eat that with a little side of pasta, and it's a delicious meal. Nobody makes it anymore. Very few people, very few families make it. So we carried that tradition on, and we have an annual Brajol night where we honor.
I'm coming to that next night.
Okay.
Make sure you put it on your calendar.
I'm putting it on the calendar now.
And we use that as an event to honor someone who has done a lot for the community, be it Norristown, Montgomery County, whatever, that has given back and really made an impact and done more than just try to profit from whatever. So and we've been doing that again for about a good 30 years. As far back as I can remember that I've been involved with the organization. We continue that every year. It's usually around March or early April. We try to get it in before Holy Week because we don't want to interfere with not being able to eat meat because that's
And it's always on a Thursday night. So
yes,
it's
on a Thursday night.
It's not on a Friday.
The fun thing about the evening is that it's in the flavor of a Dean Martin roast. So whomever we're bringing up to honor, we're typically, poking him a little bit with some insults and hoping that he'll poke us back with some, which typically happens. So it's a really fun evening.
Yeah, they're a great evening. Now, when we talk about the feast day, when you actually carry the statue that you have through the streets, this is not a small affair. There are tons of people, both Italians and other people in the community that join in this now.
Yes.
And so let's talk a little bit about that day when you do it. How does it start, and then how does it finish up? So,
Okay. It's a very exciting day. I think for many of us, it's like probably the biggest day of the year, believe it or not.
it's almost like a Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And people, as they said, travel wherever they're at, they come home for it.
So it's almost like a reunion. You see people you
big
haven't
reunion.
seen for a while.
Right.
And
That's
kids,
huge.
you see the kids when they were little, now grown up, and they have their own kids. It's got to be a great event.
Since I was ordained, I always had to tell my pastor, listen, I'll work here in this church every single day of the year except the day of the feast. I'll say my mass in the morning at my church, but I have to be in Norristown.
But I'm outta here
I'm
after
in
that.
Norristown after that. So, but anyway, it starts out in the morning with mass. The lodge marches to the church, and we have mass. And I'm usually the celebrant of it since I've been ordained. I've been honored to be able to do that and to tell the story for everybody that's there about how this all began and where the devotion to the Blessed Mother came from. And then after that, Mass, as the Mass ends, the people come out of the church, and there they wait out in front of the church on Main Street for the procession to begin.
And then so the lodge members come and take the
They
statue.
carry the statue out of the church, people applaud, the bells ring, the band plays, and it's a very, very exciting moment for everybody, especially when the 25 men pick the statue up and bring it out into the street.
And one woman, Leah.
That's right, we
Yes.
have one woman. That's
Leah
right.
Melita.
Yeah, that's right. She broke the ranks, but it's so great to see her in there,
Yep.
you know.
I was thinking, do all you have to go out in the Schuylkill River and fish one day? Is that ever true? So we have no fishermen in this group then?
No,
Not that we know.
You know,
Actually, our people that came to Norristown were not the fishermen. The people that went from Sciacca to Boston, they were all the fishermen. Our people were the peasants who worked in the fields over
Yeah,
there.
we were the farmers.
So that were the
Right.
ones, that's why they came to Norristown to work just manual, that kind of manual labor. It's an interesting difference, you know.
That is
Yeah.
interesting.
But anyway, so then we have the procession through the streets of
And how many
Mason.
blocks does the procession go?
Let me see, about, now I guess about 10 or 12, would you say?
Yeah, it makes the loop.
Years ago, it used to go much longer, but it still goes about 10, 12 blocks, you know, through, up and down the hills, just like in
Sciacca,
Sciacca.
yeah.
There's a Sandy Street is a
Walnut
high-
Street, Sandy Street, down Tremont, down Erie, wrap around, come back to the church. It's a,
Right.
Are there any bands or anything? Anybody playing music?
Well, the Verdi Band,
Verdi Band.
Verdi
Verdi
Band of
Band.
Norristown, it's a very, playing the same kind of music
That you
that they
play.
play
Oh,
in
really?
Sciacca.
Really?
The Italian symphonic marches, so it's everything very authentic, you know? And then we have a benediction of the Blessed Sacrament back at the church where all the people
So what it goes through, then it goes back to
the church, back to the church. And there, from there, we go up to Savior Hall, which is the former Holy Savior Cafeteria,
Right.
for all the festivities which these guys have worked so hard to prepare.
That's where all the food's at.
and that's where the food is.
That's exactly right. That's where it really gets
Can't have a
We have the
party
roast
without
pork
food.
sandwiches and the fried dough and the cannolis.
Yeah.
So who does the food? Who does
Well,
it?
a variety of people help with the food, but,
So some of this, a lot of it's all homemade, correct?
well, we buy the peppers, the sweet and hot peppers, and then on the Friday before the feast, you know, we wash them and we clean them like that, and then
And we
they're
cook 'em.
cooked. And then they set up, and they get put in the refrigerator until feast day, and then the food comes in on this Friday or Saturday before the feast, and then on feast day, it gets cooked. You got the sausage and the roast pork.
Carl Venezia Meats does all of the pork for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
He preps it at his shop. He pre-roasts all the pork roasts, slices everything, brings it all down to the cafeteria, to the big kitchen there, and that's where then he finishes all the cooking with the juices and the herbs and the spices and all of that, and then we have a line out front there that they have
50 volunteers
It's about
right?
50 volunteers.
All there to help make sure that the feast
serve
goes off the way
everybody.
we want it
So
to.
if I showed up, they would feed me too? Is
They
that-
will.
Oh,
Absolutely.
happily.
Yeah, you can
I
count
don't
on
know
it.
about you out there, I said, just put the 18th on there and get prepared to eat and show up.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
just say, I saw this show, they'll let you in, and no problem, no questions
Come with
asked
it.
at all.
As a matter of fact, it's not just the Italian community
No.
that comes to our feast. It is the entire Norristown community.
And that's important,
And
it gets
everyone
back
is
to the
welcome.
traditions
Yeah,
that
It's
are
open, it's
there.
open to
Yeah.
everyone.
And
yeah.
that's the
Open
interesting
for
thing
everyone.
about our country, a lot of these things, because we want to share those traditions with everybody else
Sure.
and
That's
say-
right.
and be part of that, and we can put ourselves in the shoes of the people, and that's great.
That's an important part of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's been many Italian festivals in the Montgomery County area. The Feast of the MSS is the oldest.
It's the oldest.
longest.
Well, it's what, 115 years?
115 years.
115 years
Yeah.
old,
Yeah.
115 years old.
Yeah.
That's right. But I would assume the food part of it, back in the original days when it was originally established, there were probably people that really needed to eat at that particular, that they had very meager diets just because of the.
I would think.
of
Absolutely.
that. And
Sure.
so it was
That's right.
important for the community to have this day for these people, because that
Right.
may have been the best meal that they had maybe
Right.
in months.
That's
For
right.
the most part. So
And
people-
we can only try to imagine the emotions they must have had too, in having the feast when it first started 115 years ago. Here they had left all of this, and in Sciacca it's an unbelievable celebration. But to come here to this strange land and to Norristown, which was so much different from where they were from, and to establish this festival that must have made them just think back of home. For a day, they were transported back to where they came from. It must have been just a marvelous thing.
Comfort, a comfort.
A comfort,
Yeah.
really, a great comfort. And it was a tie. A priest that came here one time from Sciacca, Father Falanca.
For the feast?
For the feast, yeah. He came with about 50 people from Sciacca after we had led our first trip.
Yeah, we're going to
there.
get into that one, because I
Okay.
want to hear that story, but go ahead.
But he came up with a beautiful expression. He said, there's a bridge that's built between Sciacca and Norristown. And he said, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is the bridge. So even though we're 3,000 miles separated, even though we're separated by years, this devotion unites us as one. And when you go to Sciacca, you are immediately welcomed by these people, not just because of your ancestry, but because they're proud that we have kept this tradition alive that started in their town.
I know, Charlie told me that you do a lot of pilgrimages to different areas of the world, but tell us about the first time you put a pilgrimage together to go to Sciacca
Yeah.
and with people. Tell us a little bit about that story.
I didn't know what it was going to be like. This was in 1990.
1990.
And I announced that we were
You were
gonna run-
29 years old.
Yeah, that's right. I was 29, that's right. And I had different color hair. But anyway, immediately 100 people signed up for it, and we were maxed out right away. So we went, and once again, at that point, I didn't even, the contact with our relatives and my family had ceased, So we went over there, and anyway, I presented myself as a priest and that we were all from Norristown. Well, immediately, the people start coming to the hotel and everything. And we were there for the feast, for the 15th of August, because they celebrated right on the feast
15th.
day. Yes. And so they said the next day was going to be the feast. They said, we will come to get you. They arrived at the hotel with a 100-piece band. And they played the Italian national anthem and the Star Spangled Banner. And there they paraded us up to the church.
So you got everybody comes out of the hotel.
Everybody came, all of our people, they said to me, Father, what's going on? What's going on? I said, we're being taken to the church with a band and everything. I said, yeah, and people are waving American flags and everything and we got close to the church. And a guy in the band showed me, he said, we're going to play this for you now. And here it was Stars and Stripes Forever. And so it was just so exciting. We felt like General Patton marching through we were conquering again, And it was just a fantastic feeling. And then as we got to the front steps of the cathedral, the Chiesa Madre, at the top of the steps was Father Falanca, who is the archpriest of the city, with his arms out like this. as if he was welcoming the children back home.
So really, the bridge happened.
And the bridge
The
happened.
bridge happened that day.
Right.
And you could really feel that and sense it, and everybody was probably very emotional about it.
That's right. And years later, they decided to have a stained glass window to commemorate it. And Richard has a picture of it.
I don't know if the camera can get a picture of that.
Yeah, that's the window that's over the Chiesa Madre. And the window is, on the bottom part in the left, is the facade of the Chiesa Madre, the cathedral in Sciacca. And on the other side is the facade of Holy Savior Church in
Here in
Norristown.
Norristown.
And there is the bridge.
And they have the boat in the middle.
And the boat in the middle,
Hopefully you can
crossing
look it
the
up
Atlantic.
And you can feel the bridge there.
So when people from Norristown go there now, they look up at this window, it's lit up at night.
I'm changing my address to Norristown. They'll let me in.
Oh, you better say you're from Norristown.
Yeah, I'll mention your name, and I'll give me the best restaurants that are in there.
Right, oh.
But let me know, let me ask you this, if you go back again, I mean, I know you've been back several times, did they say, oh my God, here they come again, do we have to do this all over? But I'm sure they just are just as excited.
They're
as
just
you.
as excited, just as excited.
This
really.
is great.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for the show today, but let me tell you, this is great. We talked about food, we talked about traditions, we talked about family, we talked about all these things about community. So get there. When is it? It's on
Sunday, August
Hold up the
18th.
poster.
August the 18th. Hold up the poster, we got it.
Yeah.
You'll have food, you'll be able to participate in this great tradition, understand who we are, and understand who we are as Americans also. So from Hank Cisco, have a great day, and just remember, if you're going to walk on water, know where the rocks are. Talk to you later.
There you go.